October 1972. A man has just won South Korea's most important martial arts tournament for the fourth consecutive time. 8,000 people standing and applauding, photographers surrounding the ring, officials draping a sash over his shoulder. When it was all over, while the lights were still on and the crowd was still roaring, the champion left his trophy on the canvas and begged. Was there no one in the entire building willing to face him? He wasn't celebrating, he was falling apart. And somewhere in the upper stands, a man in a dark jacket, without a badge, without a ticket, watched everything without moving a single muscle. His name was Bruce Lee. He was 31 years old. I was 22. My father got the tickets. I didn't even like taekwondo. I went because he asked me to. 8,000 people, and I could smell the cigarette smoke from the back row. The seats were concrete cold. I remember Fist of Fury had finished filming. Enter the Dragon hadn't started yet. Bruce Lee was between projects, between continents, between the version of himself the world already knew and the version it would never forget. He had a window of free time and used it to fly to Seoul. The reason was simple. South Korea was celebrating its national taekwondo championship, the biggest domestic tournament of the year, thousands of competitors, a packed stadium, and Bruce Lee wanted to see it. Not to discover talent, not to promote himself or his movies. He wanted to study, he wanted to sit among the crowd and observe how the Korean fighters moved, how they executed their kicks, how they managed distance, and how they breathed between exchanges. This was Bruce Lee, a man who once spent 3 hours watching a fencing match in Oakland because he wanted to understand footwork. A man who filmed himself shadowboxing and then watched the footage frame by frame looking for wasted motion. He didn't believe any single style contained the whole truth. He believed every style contained a piece of it, and he was going to look for those pieces wherever they existed. So he sat in the upper stands of the Jangchung Arena, anonymous, watching. Below him, on the tournament floor, a man named Kim Sung-jin was about to end someone's career. Kim Sung-jin was not a sport fighter. He had become one, but that wasn't what he was. He was born in 1943 in a small village near Daegu. His father was a farmer. His mother died when he was 11. He enlisted in the Republic of Korea Army at 18. His father kept working the farm, but had stopped being a father the day they buried his wife. The boy raised himself after that. The army gave him structure. It also gave him taekwondo. Military taekwondo in the early 60s was not the taekwondo that would later appear in the Olympics. There were no electronic scoring vests, no penalties for clinching, no careful distinctions between allowed and prohibited target zones. Military taekwondo was a combat system. Kicks were designed to break bones, blocks were designed to damage the striking limb. The philosophy was direct. Incapacitate the enemy before he incapacitates you. Kim was good at it, better than good. His instructors noticed within the first 6 months. By the end of his second year, he was teaching. By his third year, he was assigned to a special training unit preparing soldiers for deployment to Vietnam. He never went to Vietnam. His job was to get other men ready for it. He stood in front of rows of young soldiers and taught them how to deliver a side kick that could split a sternum. He taught them how to use an elbow strike at close range. He taught them what to do when a rifle jammed and the enemy was 3 meters away. Some of those men returned, others didn't. Kim trained the next group anyway. He left the army in 1968 after 10 years of service. He was 25. His body was a compressed instrument. His legs could generate a force most civilian fighters had never felt. His reaction time was abnormal. 10 years in the army had eliminated every unnecessary movement from his body. What remained was clean and fast. He entered civilian competition because people told him he should. He won his first regional tournament without losing a single round, won the next and the next. By 1970, he was South Korea's most dominant taekwondo competitor, Kim Sung-jin. Everyone in Seoul knew that name in 1972. You didn't have to follow taekwondo to know it. He was on the radio, he was in the newspapers. My mother knew his name, and she couldn't tell one fighter from another. No one lasted more than 2 rounds against him. Most didn't even last one. The newspapers called him Iron Leg. Not because it sounded good in a headline, but because fighters who had taken his kicks said it felt like being struck by a metal bar. 2 men had left tournaments with fractured ribs from a single side kick. One man's shin bone cracked from a low roundhouse kick in the second round. Nobody wrote about those details. They simply called him Iron Leg. By October 1972, he had been undefeated in Korean competition for 4 years. He was 29 years old. He was the best taekwondo fighter in the country, and everyone in the Jangchung arena knew it. The tournament lasted 2 days. Kim's category was on the second day. The stadium was packed. Over 8,000 people, families, students, military officers in full dress uniforms, children eating rice cakes in the aisles, and South Korea took its national championship seriously. Taekwondo was more than a sport here. It was a point of national identity. In a country that had been occupied, divided, and bombed in recent memory, Taekwondo was one of the few things that belonged solely to Korea. The champion carried that weight. Kim moved through his early rounds like a butcher through cattle. He knew where to cut. He knew how deep. The only question was how long the other man would hold out. His first opponent, a young fighter from Busan, lasted 40 seconds. Kim feinted a front kick, drew the block, then delivered a spinning back kick that hit the man so hard he forgot how to breathe. The first fight lasted maybe 40 seconds. The man from Busan collapsed, and I thought, this is going to be a long night of short fights. And nobody wanted to face him. You could see it in their eyes before the match even started. They had already lost. The crowd gasped. 40 seconds. Most were still finding their seats. His second opponent lasted longer, almost 2 full minutes, a stocky fighter from Hongju with heavy hands and good footwork. He tried to stay inside to neutralize Kim's reach. It was a reasonable strategy. Kim let him advance, took a body blow on purpose, and then launched a roundhouse kick to the head that connected with a sound the entire stadium heard. The man from Hongju dropped, tried to get up. Another kick landed before he could finish the attempt. The second time never happened. The semifinal was more of the same. A tall fighter from Taejun with long legs and good timing. He was skilled, but he was also terrified. You could see it in his overly wide stance, weight shifted too far back. He was already planning his retreat before Kim threw the first strike. It took 90 seconds. Then came the final. His opponent was a man named Park Jun, 23 years old, a rising star on the Seoul University circuit. Fast, technical, brave. Park had advanced through the division with genuine skill. He had a beautiful roundhouse kick and fast hands. The crowd liked him. He was the future of the sport. People said he lasted 1 round. Kim opened with a low kick that Park barely blocked. The impact shifted Park's weight to his back foot. Kim saw it and threw a straight punch to the chest that drove Park backward. Park tried to reset, tried to find his distance. Kim didn't let him. Kim closed the gap with a shuffle step and delivered a side kick that landed squarely on Park's ribs. You could hear the air rushing out of Park's body from the upper stands. Park doubled over, his hands dropping. Kim could have finished him right there, but he didn't. Park straightened up, raised his guard again, and tried to throw a counter kick. Kim dodged it, stepped inside, and delivered a palm strike under Park's chin that snapped his head back. Park's legs gave out, he fell to his knees. The referee stopped the fight. The stadium erupted. 8,000 people on their feet, clapping, shouting, stamping feet on concrete. Kim had won the national championship again, for the 4th consecutive time. They gave him a trophy, a large bronze piece topped with a taekwondo figure. They draped a sash over his shoulder. Officials shook his hand. Photographers took pictures. Kim Sung-jin stood in the center of the ring, holding the trophy, and felt nothing. This is the part of the story no one expected. The ceremony ended, the officials stepped back, the photographers lowered their cameras, the crowd began to settle, expecting the stadium to start emptying out. Kim didn't leave the ring. He stayed there, trophy in his right hand, sash over his left shoulder, sweat drying on his forehead, 8,000 people watching, and he didn't move. At first, people thought it was a moment of quiet celebration, a champion savoring his victory. But 10 seconds turned into 20, 20 turned into 30. The stadium grew quieter. Something was wrong. Kim set the trophy on the canvas and straightened up. He looked at the crowd and then spoke. There is no one. His voice filled the stadium like a crack spreading across a windshield. Quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. He wasn't threatening anyone, he was begging. He pointed to a man sitting in the second row, a large man, perhaps a former fighter. You face me. The man didn't move, didn't answer, just stared. Kim pointed to another man, younger, athletic build. You. Silence. He pointed to a group of men in the 5th row, military uniforms. Any of you? Nothing. The crowd was frozen. This wasn't part of the program. This wasn't tradition. A champion doesn't challenge spectators after winning the national title. Whatever he wanted was not in that trophy. The ceremony was over. The photographers left. I should have walked out, but I didn't. I saw him put the trophy on the floor and thought, that's not how a winner stands. Then he began pointing at people, at strangers. You fight me. No one moved, no one said a word. It was the loneliest thing I have ever seen a man do in front of a crowd. The officials behind Kim exchanged nervous glances. One of them stepped forward, then stopped. No one knew what to do. Kim Sung-jin was having a breakdown. Not the kind that smashes furniture, but the kind that breaks a man from within while he stands perfectly still. The kind that happens when a man climbs a mountain his whole life, and the summit is just dirt and wind. He had won every tournament, beaten everyone, and winning had ceased to mean anything. Every victory felt thinner than the last. Every opponent fell faster. What had given structure to his life since he was 18, what had replaced his mother, his father's farm, and the friends he never had turned hollow. He wasn't being arrogant, he was desperate. 8,000 people and not a single real fighter among you. The stadium was dead silent. 8,000 people holding their breath, the only sound being the hum of the fluorescent lights above the ring. Then Kim's finger stopped moving. He pointed to a man sitting in the upper stands. Dark jacket, no badge, calm posture, watching everything like a cat watches a room. Still, patient, completely present. A murmur started near the front rows. Someone had recognized the man. The whisper traveled through the crowd like a current through water. Row by row, section by section. That's Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is here. It's really him. At first, I thought my friend was wrong. Bruce Lee doesn't come to places like this. Why would he be here in this stadium? Then Bruce stood up, and I forgot how to breathe for a second. Kim didn't know who Bruce Lee was. No, at first he saw a man sitting alone, relaxed, unfazed by the silence that had paralyzed everyone else. That was what caught his attention. Everyone in the stadium was stiff with discomfort, except him. Someone near the ring told Kim the name, told him this was the Hong Kong martial artist, the movie star, the man who fought in the movies and, according to all credible sources, fought even better outside of them. For a moment, Kim didn't matter. No one in the stadium was looking at anyone except the man sitting in row 14. Bruce Lee returned the look. No one moved, no one spoke. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere in the stadium, a child coughed and the sound felt like an intrusion. Bruce Lee stood up. He didn't rush, didn't put on a show. He buttoned his jacket, passed by the people in his row politely, without pushing anyone. He walked down the aisle stairs at a normal pace. Every step was even, every step was the same length. The crowd parted before him like water around a stone. A child in the aisle stared at him. Bruce Lee looked down, gave the boy a brief nod, and kept walking. And he walked down those stairs as if he were going to buy a newspaper, unhurried, without spectacle. Everyone else was losing their minds, and this man was buttoning his jacket. When he reached the edge of the ring, he stopped. He looked at Kim, looked at the officials, looked at the crowd. Then he spoke, his voice quiet enough that only those closest to him could hear clearly. I came here to watch, to learn. I didn't come to fight. He paused. But you're not looking for an opponent, you're looking for an answer. I can give you that. He took off his jacket, folded it, and placed it at the edge of the canvas. Underneath was a black turtleneck shirt that fit as if stitched to his body. He took off his shoes, placed them beside his jacket, and stepped onto the canvas barefoot. The stadium noise was something between a roar and a gasp. 8,000 people who had come to see a taekwondo tournament were about to see Bruce Lee fight. No official stepped forward to referee. No one announced rules. The men in suits near the ring looked at each other, and not a single one moved. Whatever was about to happen, no one wanted to be the man who tried to stop it. Kim Sung-jin settled into his stance, left foot forward, hands high, weight balanced on the balls of his feet. It was the stance of a man who had stood like that 10,000 times. There was no thought in it, it was architecture. His muscles remembered what his mind no longer needed to process. The stance wasn't a choice, it was a reflex backed by 10 years of military discipline. Bruce Lee didn't take a traditional stance. He stood right side forward, hands low, weight distributed in a way that made him look almost casual. His feet were close together, his shoulders relaxed. To someone unfamiliar with fighting, he looked unprepared. To someone who understood fighting, he looked like the most dangerous person in the room. Kim moved first. He launched a low roundhouse kick to Bruce Lee's lead leg. Fast, a kick designed to numb the thigh and destroy footwork for the rest of the fight. It was a smart opening, a military opening. Take the foundation, then take the man. Bruce Lee shifted his weight and let the kick graze his shin. He didn't block it, didn't check it. He moved just enough to take the force off it, like a matador shifting his weight an inch while the bull commits to a full charge. Kim followed with a front kick to the body. Bruce Lee moved laterally and tapped Kim's extended knee as it passed, a light, almost dismissive touch, but Kim felt it. He felt the precision. That touch could have been a strike. It was a message. The crowd was silent. Not the uncomfortable silence from before, but a different one. The silence of people watching something they had never seen before. Kim reset. He understood now that this man moved differently. He changed his approach. Instead of single kicks, he began throwing. Combinations. A low kick followed by a high one, a front kick followed by a spinning heel kick. The techniques were clean, powerful. Any one of them could end a fight against an ordinary opponent. Bruce Lee was not ordinary. He moved through the combinations like a man walking through a crowd, turning a shoulder here, angling his body there, touching no one. He wasn't blocking. He was redirecting his own position, finding the spaces between Kim's techniques. Every kick Kim threw created an opening somewhere. Bruce Lee saw each one, but didn't exploit them, not yet. Kim launched a spinning back kick, his best weapon, the kick that had knocked out 3 opponents that very day. I've watched fights my whole life. I've never seen a man move the way Bruce Lee moved that night. He wasn't fighting Kim, he was teaching him, and Kim didn't know it yet. It was fast, heavy, and came from an angle most fighters couldn't read in time. Bruce Lee read it. He ducked under the kick, letting it pass over his right shoulder, and stepped inside. For half a second, he was close enough to touch Kim's face. He didn't throw a strike. He just stood there inside Kim's guard, close enough for Kim to smell the soap on his skin. Then he stepped back. Another message. The crowd made a sound. Not a shout, something lower, involuntary. Kim adjusted again. He was a smart fighter, having spent a decade teaching soldiers how to adapt under pressure. He recognized what Bruce Lee was doing. Bruce Lee was showing him the openings without punishing them. It was a form of teaching, and that realization made Kim furious. He attacked with genuine intent for the first time. No more testing, no more probing. He threw a straight punch followed by a side kick, then closed the distance and tried to grab Bruce Lee's neck. This wasn't tournament taekwondo. This was the combat version, the military version, the version he had taught to men going to war. Bruce Lee slipped the punch, caught the side kick on his hip. The impact was real, it hurt, and you could see a brief tightening around his eyes. Kim pressed forward, launching a short-range elbow strike. Bruce Lee deflected it with his open palm and fired a short body strike to Kim's ribs. It landed. Kim grunted, but didn't stop. He grabbed for Bruce Lee's neck again, this time snagging a handful of shirt fabric, pulled Bruce Lee toward him, and threw a knee. Bruce Lee turned his hips, took the knee on his thigh, and caught Kim's grabbing hand. He redirected it downward, throwing Kim off balance for a fraction of a second. In that fraction, Bruce Lee launched a lead straight punch that stopped 1 centimeter from Kim's throat. 1 centimeter. Kim felt the wind of the punch on his skin, felt the displaced air, but felt no impact because there was no impact. Bruce Lee had stopped his fist. Both men froze. The stadium was so quiet you could hear the fluorescent lights hum 20 meters above the ring. Kim looked down at the fist suspended in front of his throat, looked into Bruce Lee's eyes. He saw no anger there, no emotion, no satisfaction. Only complete, total, terrifying focus, the focus of a man who had chosen, in the space between one heartbeat and the next, not to do what his body was trained to do. Kim understood. The fight was over. Not because a referee had stepped in, not because someone had been knocked out, but because Bruce Lee had been in a position to end it, truly end it, and had decided not to. That decision was the answer to Kim's question. The fist stopped an inch from Kim's face. I was halfway up the stadium, and I swear I felt it in my chest. 8,000 people fell silent at the same time. No one breathed. There isn't a single real fighter among you. There is, and he just chose to leave you standing. The two men stood facing each other. Bruce Lee lowered his fist slowly, took a step back. His breathing was slightly elevated but controlled. Sweat glistened on his forehead. Kim had pushed him. Not enough to beat him, but enough to make him work. Kim lowered his hands, his chest heaving, his face covered in sweat. He stared at Bruce Lee for a long time, then did something no one in the stadium expected. He bowed. Not the quick, formal bow of a tournament competitor, but a deep bow. The bow of a student to a master. The bow of a man who entered the ring a champion and was leaving it a student. Bruce Lee bowed back. Same depth, same respect. No words were needed. The stadium began making noise again, slowly at first, then louder, then deafening. 8,000 people who had just witnessed something they couldn't fully explain, releasing the tension they had held in their bodies for the past few minutes. What happened next wasn't planned. There was no script, no prepared commentary, no ceremony. Two men stood in a ring and talked, and 8,000 people listened. Bruce Lee began first, speaking in English while a man near the ring translated into Korean sentence by sentence. "You're very fast. Your kicks are some of the best I've ever seen. Your side kick would stop most fighters before they even knew what happened." Kim listened, he didn't speak. "But I want to tell you something. You asked if there was anyone who could test you. That's the wrong question." Bruce Lee walked in a slow circle around the ring as he spoke, not pacing, but moving the way he always moved, as if standing still cost him something. "You fight inside a system, taekwondo. Military taekwondo. It's a good system. Your kicks are perfect inside that system. Your timing is trained for that system. Your distance, your angle, your breathing. It all belongs to taekwondo." He stopped walking. "But when I moved outside your system, you didn't know where I was. When I moved at angles your training didn't prepare you for, you had to think. And when a fighter has to think, he's already late." Kim's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in recognition. "This isn't a problem with taekwondo," Bruce Lee said. "This is a problem with any system that becomes a cage. If you practice only one way of moving, you can only see opponents who move that way. Everyone else becomes invisible." He looked directly at Kim. "You asked if there was no one. The truth is there are many. You simply can't see them because your system has blinded you to everything outside of it." The translator passed along every sentence. The crowd was still. Not the frozen stillness from before, but a listening stillness, the stillness of people hearing something they needed to hear. Bruce Lee continued. "I don't have a style. People ask me what style I fight. I tell them, I don't fight in a style, I fight like water. Water has no form. You pour it into a cup, it becomes the cup. You pour it into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You pour it into a river, it flows." He turned back to Kim. "Your crisis isn't that you were too strong. Your crisis is that you confused winning with purpose. You won everything inside your system, and when there was nothing left to win, you felt empty. But the emptiness wasn't from winning. It was because winning was all you had." Kim's eyes were moist. He didn't wipe them away. "Winning every fight teaches you about other men. Stopping your fist teaches you about yourself. One of these matters more." Bruce Lee paused. The translator finished. "I stopped my fist because killing you wouldn't have taught either of us anything. I stopped because the purpose of fighting isn't to destroy, it's to understand. If you fight only to win, you'll always end up where you are right now, standing in a ring, holding a trophy, wondering why it feels like nothing." Kim finally spoke, his voice raspy. "Where does a man go when the only path he knows ends here?" Bruce Lee looked at him. A slight expression crossed his face. Not quite a smile, but close to it. "Taekwondo was your first language. Good, now learn a second and a third. Not just other ways of fighting, but other ways of thinking, other ways of seeing the man in front of you. Keep what is useful, discard what is not, even if it hurts. The moment you stop moving, you become a statue, and statues don't fight. They just stand there while the world moves around them." Kim nodded. "Don't be a statue," Bruce Lee said. They shook hands in the center of the ring. A firm handshake, two men who had entered to fight and were leaving with mutual respect. Bruce Lee walked back to the edge of the canvas, picked up his jacket and put on his shoes. He didn't wave to the crowd, didn't bow to the audience. He dressed the same way he had undressed. Calmly, methodically, as if 8,000 people weren't watching. A man near the edge of the ring reached out his hand to shake. Bruce Lee shook it, nodded once, and walked toward the exit. Kim picked up his trophy from the canvas and looked at it. An hour ago, it was the only thing he wanted. Now it felt like something belonging to a different man. The bronze was cold. He tucked it under his arm, looked at the crowd, and left the ring. The stadium remained packed for another 20 minutes. People didn't leave. They sat in their seats talking to each other about what they had just seen. Some argued over who had won. Some said Bruce Lee. Some said the fight was never the point. But the men who had trained in martial arts and the men who understood what had happened in that ring were quiet. They knew it wasn't a fight. It was instruction. The newspapers covered it the next day. Short articles in the sports section. Martial arts movie star appears at national championship. Details were scarce. Reporters who had been there described the confrontation in broad terms. No one had footage, no one had audio. Translations of Bruce Lee's words varied from paper to paper, and none of them captured exactly what he had said. The newspapers forgot about it within a week. Enter the Dragon began production, and Bruce Lee flew to Hong Kong. The rest of the world never knew what happened, but 8,000 people knew, and 8,000 people don't forget what they saw with their own eyes. Fathers told their sons, instructors told their students, old men brought it up at dinner tables 30 years later, while their wives rolled their eyes because they had heard it 100 times. The details shifted with every retelling, the facts bent, but one thing remained the same in every version. A fist stopped 1 centimeter from a man's throat, and that centimeter meant more than any knockout ever could. Kim Sung-jin never competed again after that day. He didn't announce his retirement, he simply didn't enter the next tournament, or the one after that. People asked where he went. Some said he opened a small school in the countryside. Some said he traveled to Japan to study judo. Some said he went to Thailand to watch Muay Thai fighters. No one knew for sure. There is one detail that survived. A Korean martial arts magazine published an interview with an anonymous taekwondo instructor in 1975. The interviewer asked about Bruce Lee, who had died 2 years prior. The instructor said only one thing worth recording. He was the only man who ever beat me, and he did it without touching my skin. The interviewer asked for clarification. His fist stopped here. The instructor touched his own throat. 1 centimeter, maybe less. I felt the air move. I didn't feel the fist. Did you ever figure out why he stopped? Because he didn't need to finish it. He had already won. I spent 15 years perfecting one way of fighting, and it blinded me to everything else. He moved in ways I had no answer for. I had beaten every man in Korea. He beat me by doing something I had never seen. He showed me in 2 minutes what no trophy ever could. I've watched fights my whole life. I've never seen a man move the way Bruce Lee moved that night. He wasn't fighting Kim. He was teaching him, and Kim didn't know it yet. Bruce Lee died on July 20th, 1973. He was 32 years old. Enter the Dragon premiered 6 days later. The world mourned a movie star. The people who knew him mourned something else. A man who spent his entire short life trying to understand what fighting truly meant, and who came closer to the answer than anyone before or after. Somewhere in South Korea, in a small town or a large city or a village near the coast, a man who was once the best taekwondo fighter in the country heard the news. We don't know what he did. We don't know if he wept, or bowed, or simply sat in silence the way Bruce Lee had sat in the upper stands of the Jangchung Arena. What we do know is this. In October 1972, 2 men stood in a ring in Seoul. One of them had spent 15 years winning, only to discover that trophies are empty and victories mean nothing. The other had bought a ticket to sit in row 14, and ended up giving a man his life back. A fist stopped 1 centimeter from a throat, a lesson was delivered without a single word of anger, and 8,000 people watched a fight end with something rarer than a knockout, mercy. The trophies are gone, the stadium has been renovated, the newspapers have yellowed and crumbled, but the story survived the way only true things survive. Not in newsprint, but in the mouths of the people who were there. A fighter is not measured by how hard he can hit. He is measured by what he teaches the man facing him. Kim Sung-jin entered that ring as a champion.